Are you ready to accelerate the growth of your business? Welcome to the Revenue Growth Podcast. This is the place for business owners, sales leaders, and marketing professionals to get ideas and inspiration to drive exponential revenue growth. Each week, you'll get actionable insights from the world's leading marketing and sales thought leaders and practitioners. Are you ready to grow? Let's join our host, Daryl Amy, author of Revenue Growth Engine.
Welcome back to the Revenue Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Daryl Amy, trailblazer and growth architect. We've got a great conversation queued up today. Today, we're going to learn how to leverage public relations to drive growth. Our guest, Mickie Kennedy, is fantastic. He brings deep experience in the area of PR, specifically press releases, and you're going to learn some things that are going to be extremely practical, and many of them are very, very cost effective. So stick around. Hey, if you have a sales team and you want to boost results, you need to get to know selling from the heart. What's great about selling from the heart is how it takes a different approach to driving sales. The goal is to build trust quickly with clients and prospects through authenticity. The result? More effective prospecting, higher close rates, and more referrals. Best of all, the selling from the heart methodology works with your existing sales model. So to learn more, visit www.sellingfromtheheart.net and make sure to listen to me and my co-host Larry Levine each week on the Selling from the Heart podcast. Well, today we're going to talk about PR. Public relations strategies can be a powerful way for businesses of all sizes to grow, even ones that have not traditionally thought about PR as a viable strategy. You're about to meet Mickie Kennedy. He's an expert at helping small businesses, authors, and startups increase their visibility and credibility. While working in the public relations field, he came face to face with customers that wanted to use press releases due to their effectiveness at bringing in business, but could not afford to pay the extremely high startup fees that most agencies charged. Well, realizing this, he put together an incredible service called eReleases. eReleases gives small businesses access to the media and national newswires, all with a personal touch. Well, today, Mickie is going to coach us on how we can take advantage of PR strategies to increase our visibility and credibility. You're going to discover how to get regular local media coverage without spending a dime, and you'll learn how to make your unique selling proposition absolutely irresistible to the media. Wow, this is going to be great. So, Mickie, welcome to the Revenue Growth Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me.
I love this topic. And, you know, it's interesting. The concept of public relations tends to get overlooked in most small businesses. We got sales teams that are out selling. We've got marketing teams that are doing, traditional marketing, and most of that is digital these days, and maybe some advertising. Why is it, do you think that small businesses tend to overlook press releases and other PR motions as great growth strategies?
I think it's because PR has a big reputation that it doesn't work. And I will say that the majority of press releases that we issue, nothing happens to them other than the syndication of press releases on various news websites that just happens with everyone. But the average press release fails. And so a lot of people just feel like this, doesn't work for me. That being said, if you do a strategic press release, you can get media pickup. I have one technique that always generates media pickup. On average, it's usually between 6 and 14 articles that are written about you. Not the press release on a different website, but an actual journalist wrote an article based off of your press release. And
wow.
It takes a little bit more work and being a little more strategic. And I think that a lot of people are looking for really quick, easy wins, things where they can set something up like an advertising platform once you've got the campaign live and just, forget it or feed it, more capital. But with press releases, it takes a little bit more ongoing strategic strategy, trying to figure out what people respond to, thinking outside the box, knowing your industry, what they're talking about, perhaps also what they're not talking about. And it can be a little more difficult, but I also believe that it's being strategic is something that any entrepreneur or small business can do if they're just willing to put the effort towards it. And I find that it's not a physical effort; it's more of being creative and opening yourself up to stuff. A lot of these things would not survive a larger business where things go through committee and a lot of people have to sign off on it, because it's not necessarily the safe press release about a personnel change or a new director of HR that's going to generate a lot of buzz.
Well, all of this said, and I'm looking forward to exploring, the anatomy of a strategic press release as opposed to one that flops. But, my opinion has been, as an entrepreneur and small business owner, and with the businesses that I've worked with over the last 18 years, I love press releases because I think that they're, even if it's a flop, so to say, it doesn't get picked up. You're able to demonstrate that your business is out there on multiple newswires, platforms. I think it adds an air of credibility to what you do. It certainly makes you look bigger, maybe than you might be. It's like a big boy tactic, if you will, for your company. And so to me, I want to talk about a strategic press release, but I would say, and I'm curious what you think, that even a average press release is worth something because of the credibility that it brings and the way it positions you and your company. What do you think?
I agree. So if you have a press release, you issued it on the wire, the
Mhm,
media didn't love it or respond to it, but you share it with your leads, you
mhm.
share it with your customer base. It's going to position you as someone who is thoughtful about your messaging and what you're announcing. And I think that a lot of people who are on the fence, these leads in the pipeline, are much more likely to, be tipped in the scales of placing an order with you or working with you, based on seeing that you're serious about your reputation and your messaging. And so few people go through the trouble of sending out
Right.
releases. And I had one client come to me and say, "Do you know anything about company X, Y, and Z?" And I'm like, "I really don't." And then I explored their website and I said, "Well, they have a newsroom and they've written press releases for 4 years. So it's not a fly by night website that's just looking to get your credit card information. That takes a huge amount of effort and commitment to, having a newsroom and constantly feeding it a steady diet of press releases."
Well, I think that is exactly the mindset here. Is we're just having this discussion yesterday in one of my organizations about a new provider and who we might select, and it came up in the meeting where some of these companies, we didn't know, are they going to be around? Are we going to, is it a fly by night company or a real substantial going forward company? And even if you're a startup or a small company, to have a newsroom, to have an area of your website where you share news and you're now active on press releases, to me signals to your buyers that this company is moving forward. We're taking action. So I'm just thinking about sitting there in that meeting yesterday where everyone was questioning certain provider about, well, are they even going to be around? If they could have signaled, yeah, here's our press releases, here's what's going on, we're hiring people, we're developing new things, we're moving to new markets, all of a sudden that trust goes up, and it's just a matter of taking the time to write a press release, and then now, as we're going to talk about today, actually doing it strategically kicks it up to the next level. So, what I'm curious, Mickie. By the way, there is, as I understand, a master class available, a mini course to help you understand the fundamentals of this, and we're going to share it at the end. But hey, we got the listeners here tuned in. Why don't we just go ahead and share this class right now, and then we'll dive into some of the fundamentals of a strategic press release. How can folks access some information on how to get started? I'm putting this up front
Sure.
because whether you're a sales leader or a marketing leader or a company owner, I want you to take action on this topic today. So, Mickie, I'm going to put the CTA right at the front of this podcast. How can folks learn more?
Sure. So just visit eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. It's a completely free video masterclass. It's less than an hour. There's a lot of additional collateral there as well that's included. But basically, I think anybody who's considering PR, if they watch this video, they should come away with very strategic ideas for a press release campaign of various press releases that should work. And one of the ideas always works. I've yet to have it fail. And by work, I mean generate original articles about your company or your announcement based off that press release.
Really, really cool. So eReleases.com/plan. So let's dive in. What's the anatomy of a average, boring press release versus a strategic press release that's actually going to generate some traction for your company?
Right. So they all look very similar. They're written in the third person. It's they're not elevated or very creative in the writing and stuff like that. But the real difference, I think,
well, that's good news to a lot of us, by the way, right?
Yes.
So you don't have to. I think that's the first point. I just want to put a highlighter on that. You don't have to be Bill Shakespeare or Mr. Ogilvy to craft a press release. That it's not as complicated as you think. And I think that's very encouraging to everybody.
Right. With a strategic press release, it's what you're announcing that really makes the real difference, and the approach that you take. So many people write from the perspective of, we have a new product coming out in the second quarter, so therefore we want the press release to be about that product. And they're not really taking it from the perspective of, you're sending this to a journalist who is acting as a gatekeeper, him being a curator for his audience. What is appealing in this announcement that would make it irresistible, that he would want to share it with that audience? And if you can sort of reverse engineer what you're going to announce with that in mind, I think that you'll see a lot more wins than misses when you do press releases.
I absolutely love this mindset. And of course, in Revenue Growth Engine, I'm a firm believer that buyers don't buy products. They buy the outcomes those products and services create. They buy the problems solved. They buy the goals achieved. Bob Mesta and Clay Christensen would say, we don't buy products, we hire them for a job to be done. And so what I love about this mindset about press releases, Mickie, is it forces us into thinking about the audience, which we should be doing as sales and marketing professionals all the time. Nobody wants to read about, your new product announcement. They want to read about something that's relevant to them. And if you can get something through an editor, you're probably, I'm guessing, on track with a message that actually might get through from a sales and marketing standpoint overall. Am I right?
Yes. Very interesting case studies, works very well. I mean, we journalists love stories. And so if you can talk about your product or service in the mold of a story based off of a customer or someone who's used it, beta tested it, or worked with it, that's something that a lot of journalists use. A lot of small businesses that have used us, that share their stories, have gotten picked up by Inc. magazines, Fast Company, places like that, because they love the startup environment and that culture where it is one customer, and that often that one customer matters considerably. And so, feel free to even include warts and obstacles along the way, challenges that you had. So many people want to appear bigger than they are, but realize that the journalists like to profile the small unknown startups more, because they don't have the funds to advertise. No journalist likes promoting Microsoft or Google or companies like that. They love to have find wins and interesting stories about the smaller companies, the small discoveries that no one knows about.
I think there's a nuance here that's really, really important. I'm reading Charlie Green's book, Trust-Based Selling. And Charlie, I want to have you on the Revenue Growth podcast soon to talk about this. But in Trust-Based Selling, it's a fantastic playbook on how to generate trust. And one of the things that he says is, and I'm going to paraphrase Charlie Green, but basically, trust is built when we reveal some of our flaws. And so a lot of times, in marketing and sales, we want to say we're the greatest this, we're the greatest that, and all of that. But as I'm hearing you say, when it comes to interest, like telling the story of bringing a product to market and maybe bringing up some of the pain along the way or the we did this and it flopped, or the struggles along the way. That's the kind of thing that's the hook that draws people in and simultaneously also begins to build trust in the brand and in the person or people in the press release.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's all about owning your story. Authenticity matters, and you have and own the mistakes that you've made, the obstacles you've overcome. It differentiates you from anybody else that's out there, and that is powerful, and it's powerful messaging. And so many people want to appear bigger than they are. They want to appear polished. They don't want to talk about anything that would make them seem lesser than. And as a result, a lot of the best stories that they have and the best chances for PR often are left unconsidered because they don't think about that, and they don't think about it from the perspective of a journalist who's wanting to showcase a small discovery. And despite all their challenges, they're at this point, and this is what they're doing.
Well, there's another good point here too, and I'm curious what you think about this. There's one mindset of a press release that's like the salesperson bringing in the 60 slide PowerPoint presentation to data dump on a prospect, where with the press release, you're trying to like cram in everything about the company and all of that. And it's just like, how much stuff can you cram in here versus focusing on one story. It's like, this isn't the only press release you're ever going to write. Can we just tell one story, please? And, it's like the ad or the billboard you drive by on the way to work that's got, 12-point font, and they're trying to, no one's going to read that. Can we just focus on one thing? And it seems to me that a press release is going to be much more effective if, rather than trying to throw the kitchen sink at the reader, there's actually something that is one thing and the story is built around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious. So maybe let's get real world here. Like, what are some examples of some great press releases you've seen recently? Like, what did they look like? What was the story about? What kind of real world examples? Because I want to put some real world flavor on this in terms of people sitting going, okay, what if I'm not going to announce that we hired a new employee, or I'm not going to announce that we launched a new product? Like, what do we do a press release about?
Sure. So I always recommend the one press release that always generates media coverage is to do a survey or study within your industry. And I've helped a lot of clients do these over the years. I had a local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania that came to me. They had been referred by their SEO guy, and their old website was owned by the Yellow Pages, and I don't know what happened, but it went dark. So they got a new domain name, and they were looking for auto industry trade links. And the SEO guy said, "Talk to Mickie." And I said, having done an audit with you, there's nothing newsworthy. But if you did a survey, or study to the auto industry, I think that could result in a lot of media pickup. And so you just have a link, use SurveyMonkey or Google Forms to create a survey. You get a link and you just share it. In their case, they didn't know who to share it with, so I recommended that they partner with a small trade association, and they immediately knew a couple that they were aligned with, and they got like 800 other auto repair shops in the US to participate in this. And I always say, when you're doing a survey, I like SurveyMonkey because you can do pages, and so that even if someone only completes 2/3 of it, you still have the data because it's been recorded before they got to the final page. And on the final page, I always say that's the space where you can really let your hair down and throw some left field questions in there. And surprisingly, those often do well. Not always, but they really can do well. And in their case, it was those questions that really generated a lot of buzz, and it was an open-ended question question that said, "What's the strangest thing a customer left in their car while being repaired?" And it was space for a couple of sentences. And
Yeah, brilliant.
none of it was statistically relevant because almost everyone was a unique anecdote, but the
Right.
media loved it. They published, we published like 60 of these in our results. We didn't include all of them in the press release, but the media picked and chose, the top 10, top 25 that they thought were interesting, and it did really well. I think they got like almost 20 auto trade publications, over 30 newspapers wrote articles about it, and their local newspaper wrote about it as well. So it did very well. They said within 3 months they were ranking #1 with this new website,
Wow.
which was their goal. But even more importantly, they got all this credibility of these big auto trade publications, writing an article and mentioning them because they were the author of this survey. And so they felt very much in the beginning this imposter syndrome that we're not important enough to do a survey. Why us? But I'm like,
Why not?
anyone can do it. Anybody can claim that. There's no ownership of your industry, and if you're the person that's out there collecting the data and putting it together as the author, you have a bona fide I guess credibility and understanding that within the industry you are that expert. Of this survey, you are the expert. You drafted the questions, you got the responses, and then you synthesized it and chose what to put in the press release to showcase and what to exclude.
Wow, you've already sparked 2 great ideas for me. I'm so thankful, Mickie, and I hope our listeners are getting ideas as well. And by the way, if you haven't gone there yet, espeakers.com/plan, get a masterclass on all of this. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Mickie, what's another great example of a press release that you go, wow, that went really, really well for this company?
Sure. So we had early in the pandemic, a PR professional that I know said that they were doing the dining bond initiative. It was something that they based off of sort of war bonds, and it was geared to help basically people nominate their local favorite restaurant, which at the time most restaurants were closed.
Yeah.
And it was a way in which you could put up dollars for them, and if they accepted it, the money would go directly to them, and it would be secured through like a gift certificate type experience. Generated over $10 million in revenue based off of one press release.
Wow.
Over 150 articles, including Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Almost every major publication, every food trade publication picked it up, and probably another 100 newspapers, small newspapers.
Wow.
It was something that at a time there was so much negative news. Here was something positive that you could do to help that pizza place that you love down the street that's currently closed. And so it did extremely well. And I think for them, it's partly timing, but it's also about having something that's positive and not necessarily profit driven. And there are a lot of companies that do things that aren't profit driven, and they just say, this is our charitable arm, but they never think about, is that an opportunity that we could showcase that and explore the media with it? Often, if it's just a donation, it doesn't do very well. But if you are doing something unique, this just shows that the media is willing to promote you and market you and get you out there if the messaging works. And in this case, it did. It was something that was very short-lived project, but it was very successful.
Well, that example is interesting in terms of it was connected to a local or a current news trend, right? Obviously, at that time, the beginning of the pandemic was a very, very newsworthy topic. And, it seems to me that if I want to write an effective press release, if there's a way for me to somehow have some type of tie in to a trend that people are concerned about, the Great Resignation, for example, or wherever, whatever the trend is when you're listening to this episode, it's always shifting. It seems to me that news people are probably a little more tuned to current trends.
They are. And I find that a lot of people try to jump on current trends. So if everybody is talking about the Great Resignation, what could you lend to the conversation that no one else has? Or, is there a niche that you talk about. Maybe you cover more of your business serves, say, musicians or artists. Is there something that you could say that's about that audience, and therefore the media is much more likely to pick you out of the crowd because here's a different perspective. Another thing that would work well is taking a contrarian viewpoint on a topic.
Oh, yeah.
If everybody is talking about something and it's hard to enter that conversation and be yet another voice of many. But if you're the person that's willing to say something that maybe is pointing out the negative or con side of this, then you have the opportunity to be in every article that mentions it, because journalists by their nature want to be impartial and show both perspectives. But many times it's only one perspective that's in the news, because there's nobody putting their head out there and saying, this is not a good approach. You do want to be intelligent and rational, but everybody's like pro environment and electric cars seem to be the future. But you could be that rational person that says, well, not so fast. We haven't really solved how we're going to properly dispose of these batteries at the end of their life. And they're using minerals and mining and techniques that aren't good for the environment right now. So maybe we should put it on the back burner until technology catches up and we can do this with less environmental costs and things like that. So that's a way to appear very rational. And the journalist would say, hey, if I'm going to cover the environmental thing, maybe I should put the perspective that there are some negatives and some cons on this argument.
Yeah, and referencing our survey of 850 car repair shops,
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's all worked together. It's really, really good. Hey, in the few minutes we have remaining, there are a lot of folks listening in that have businesses that service a local area, maybe a city or a metro area. What are some ways that they can get some local press without dumping thousands of dollars on advertising?
Local media is the easiest success that you can get without using a paid service. If you are looking to do local pickup, just do it yourself. Think about it this way. In your local market, there's probably less than 10, perhaps as few as 4 journalists who would write about you. Do your homework at the local newspaper. Who would that be? If you're lucky enough to have a business newspaper or business magazine, who there tends to write about your industry or companies like you? And then look for other ancillary places. It might be a regional paper, it might be a weekly paper, it could also be a magazine or something along those lines. And also there's TV and radio. Are there segments that occasionally spotlight businesses? If so, find out who the producers are of that segment or the bookers for those segments and reach out to them. So once you've built your Rolodex of 6 to 12 people, you just email them on a regular basis as you have newsworthy opportunities. The great thing is you don't need a press release. All you need is a good pitch, which is, a couple sentences of saying, hey, I'm doing this. I think it's really relevant right now, and I'd love for you to talk to me. Or I've seen this trending right now in the media, and I, as a local business, can talk specifically about that and give you a great example of how to, bring this issue up to our community. And so those opportunities are easy. And over time, doing this 4 to 6 times a year, you will be on their Rolodex, so that when they do need to plug a company like yours into a story, they'll think of you and often reach out to you and put you in stories that you didn't even pitch.
Brilliant. Really good stuff. Mickie, thank you so much for sharing time with us today. I am really looking forward to sinking my teeth into this course. It's at eSpeakers.com.
eReleases.
I'm sorry, eReleases. I'm on eSpeakers if you need to book a speaker. If you need a press release, go to eReleases.com /plan. Mickie, we appreciate you sharing time with us today. This was excellent.
Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you to everybody listening in. This is a time right now here as we're recording this at the beginning of 2022. There's a lot of distractions out there. There's a lot of things going on. But what I love about the Revenue Growth podcast audience is you're focused. You're focused on developing yourself. You're focused on learning and bringing the latest strategies and tactics to your organization to drive revenue growth. And what we've learned today, whether you own a company, you're in sales, you're in marketing, I want to encourage you strongly to take what we've learned today, grab that course, and learn how to apply press releases and public relations strategies to help you drive revenue growth. You'll build your credibility. You can build your audience. You can build your SEO. There's so many different positive outcomes here that are fantastic. And most of all, they're actually very affordable. They just take some creativity and a very small budget. And I think we've learned something today here that all of us can put into action. That's our goal right here at the Revenue Growth Podcast. My goal is to bring you actionable ideas you can put to work to grow your revenue. Do me a favor, if you would, subscribe, and would you share this episode and make sure to leave a review. This helps us spread the word about the Revenue Growth Podcast. And who knows, we might even send you a survey soon, and we'll put together an article based on that. So many great ideas today from Mickie. Thank you to everybody for listening in. Thank you for sharing it. And until next week, let's get going and let's get